Hey guys, how's it going? We are in chapter one. So today I'm actually at my group private practice. It's called Nool, Nool Counseling Group, and it is in Hattiesburg. Actually, just got out of a session with a 14-year-old who is struggling with some social anxiety. Today we worked on cognitive distortions. So I thought I'd take a moment to kind of hit some high points from chapter one. So know that when I'm doing these videos, and again, you may come across some Logan videos, but when I'm on here, it's not to cover the whole chapter. Some of this is going to be pulled from the PowerPoint that you're going to see, so you can kind of maybe follow along with that. But I really want to hit the big ideas from the chapter so that you can remember what's most important. And like when you sit down eventually in therapy one day, you're like, okay, wait, I remember these important things that Rachel told me in my practice one class. So here we go. The big idea for chapter one is, what does it mean to actually be a professional social worker? All right. So some talking points here that I want you to take from this. First, social work is much broader than therapy. All right. So I think a lot of students enter a social work program, an MSW program, thinking that social work equals counseling. And it's not just counseling. Counseling is not for everybody. And as I told you in my intro video, this is not the first social work job that I had. So even though I was doing counseling in the schools and I was doing some very brief solution focused stuff in the hospital setting and a lot of problem solving in a university setting, counseling is not something that I have done consistently in this capacity here in private practice for a huge chunk of my career. There's so many other levels for practice. So there's micro, which is what we typically refer to when we're talking about working with individuals, working one-on-one, face-to-face with a person in counseling. There's the meso level of social work practice. So we're thinking a little bit larger here, maybe small groups or family therapy, which I think is kind of goes along very well with micro because, for example, if you're working with a child, it can be very helpful to introduce group work with children or even adults. Or if we're working with a child, it can be very helpful to eventually introduce family therapy. I think that can all be really helpful in treatment. And then finally, we have macro level social work, which is much broader. That's working with larger scale community agencies, working with nonprofits, doing fundraising, grant writing. It's like the larger scale community based stuff. Students who ultimately want to do macro practice still need the same interpersonal and engagement skills that a micro or meso level social worker will have. So even if you're sitting in this class and you're like, I don't want to do counseling, not for me, don't want to do micro level work, don't ever see myself doing micro level work, you're still going to need these same skills to get through a macro level, position in social work. And likewise, clinicians, so those of you who want to do micro or meso level work, still need to understand systems, organizations, policies, and resources. So it kind of goes hand in hand. Next, social work is a values-based profession. So we don't simply ask like what techniques work. We also ask, is what I'm doing ethical? Is it culturally responsive? Is it respectful? Is it consistent with social work values? So everything we do goes back to what are our values in this profession. If you haven't already taken a look at our code of ethics, please do. Ingrain this into your brain because it is literally everything that we use to fall back on as we're making decisions in social work practice. And that's really important as we're working with clients, whether on a micro, meso, or macro scale. And professional judgment involves integrating knowledge, skills, ethics, and the client's individual circumstances in the decisions that we make in practice. All of that is very, very important. Next, competence is developmental. So you are not expected to enter practice one already knowing how to do therapy. This is just the foundation level course that builds on the skills you will need eventually to do therapy. So it's okay to feel awkward as we're practicing interviewing skills or as you're developing this new language, this new professional language. You have to develop competence around what we do, and that's why you're in class, right? Another thing that the chapter touches on is technology. Technology has changed practice, especially since COVID. There's telehealth, there's texting, there's emails, electronic records, social media, tons of virtual services and platforms, and they create some pretty incredible opportunities and also ethical challenges. So it's very important that as you're thinking about technology and social work, that we also think about professional boundaries and how they don't simply disappear because communication is happening electronically. So we want to keep that in mind. Our professional boundaries still must be maintained, even through a text or when we're using social media and a client wants to friend us. We fall back on our code of ethics and help us to make really good ethical decisions on, so what do we do with this, or how do we handle an email, how do we handle a certain kind of electronic communication with a client. So another thing to be mindful of that is written into our code of ethics. Self-care next. It is a professional sustainability matter. We have to practice self-care. In social work, we regularly encounter trauma, grief, poverty, abuse, illness, injustice, crisis. I always say people don't come to social workers because things are going awesome in their life. People come to social workers because they are at their worst. They are vulnerable. They are struggling with something. And, so we have to pour into ourselves so we can pour into others. I like to use the flight attendant analogy, right? Like we put our oxygen masks on first before we can help somebody else next to us. Keep in mind too, when we're talking about self-care, it's not simply bubble baths and like taking a vacation. It's really about processing in supervision, processing with a coworker, a supervisor, setting strong boundaries, right? Like I don't check my emails after this time at night or on a weekend. Maintaining a workload consistent with, whatever values fall within your personal life or what you were promised when you signed your contract. Seeking consultation when you don't know something, getting peer support, and knowing too when you need help. I think some of the best social workers I've worked with, myself included, have gotten their own therapy. So get counseling, especially while you're a student. Now is an excellent time to put that into practice. Go work through your own stuff so that when it's time for you to be face to face with a client, you can successfully and competently and confidently handle their baggage while yours is being maintained. So, putting it into practice, right? When you become a social worker, right? What does 5 years from now look like for you? What are you doing? And what skills from this class might you need even if you aren't providing direct therapy? Okay, so I want you to think about that as we're kind of moving forward in this class. And one thing to remember too, social work practice is the integration of knowledge, skills, values, ethics, and relationships. It's not simply a collection of techniques. There's a whole lot that goes into the work that we do, and this chapter is just the foundation. I hope that gave you just a little bit of insight into the world of social work practice. I can't wait to get into some more chapters. I hope you guys have a great week. Bye.